Today it's time for a professional match of StarCraft 2, and what I've got for you is a Protoss versus Zerg on Triton LE. And yes, you heard me accurately. This is not actually a best of 3 series or like a best of 5. I can imagine some of you clicked on this video and thought it was going to be a series. No, this is just going to be a single match of Protoss versus Zerg. Now, I know nothing about it. The only thing I know is that, well, the replay timer is ridiculously long, so I guess we're gonna, like, mine out every single last base, or at the very least, most of the minerals that are available on this map. Regardless, let's get started like we always do by introducing the players. Spawning here in the top left-hand corner of the map and playing with the red Protoss probes, we're looking inside of the main base of Harstem. And his opponent in the opposite corner with the blue Zerg drones, we have none other than Bly. Alrighty, now this game was not actually like a tournament match or not even like an online cup either. This was actually just a ladder game. Now, while this game was being played, both Bly and Harstem were streaming at the same time on Twitch, and after the game wrapped up, Bly reached out to me and mentioned, "Hey Loco, I heard you're always looking for epic games to cast. This game was awesome. You should really go ahead and have a look at it." So that's exactly what we're doing today. I'm excited to figure out what it's all about. Generally speaking, of course, the long, drawn-out macro games, they can get a little bit... I know some people watch them and then I check the YouTube comments and they're like, "Oh, Loco, nothing happened for like 20 minutes. It's like, no, nothing happened. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be the case in this particular game, but both players are going to have to mine as many resources as possible because generally speaking, right, when the games go very, very long, it's the player who mines more who comes out victorious. So I have to keep an eye out right here on exactly how much economy both of these players are going to be able to establish. Really quick, 3 bases here from Bly. This has become the new standard in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup. Basically, the way this works is you go for a hatch into a gas into a spawning pool. Then the next drone you make goes into the gas, and the next drone you make after that already becomes the 3rd hatchery. Now, obviously, this is going to be a little bit risky if you're a Zerg player, if your opponent, as the Protoss player here, goes for like a 1-base play. But it's so uncommon nowadays that Zerg players feel very comfortable taking that risk. And you can see right here, Bly actually scouts the Stargate immediately. Now, Harstem, by the way, opens up extremely safely with a gateway and a cybernetics core right here on the high ground as well. There's actually a double gap here, which is a little bit odd. You can obviously still plug that with a pylon just fine. I wonder if this is because he's playing against Bly. So for those of you unfamiliar, Bly has always been known as that very cheeky, very cheesy Zerg player. At the very least for years, that's really all he did. He went for a lot of super aggressive builds. I became a big fan of him back a couple of years ago when he really got some ridiculous victories off playing like stupid strategies that he somehow, some way made work. Now he still does those strategies from time to time, but he's actually really created for himself a great macro game as well. So that's one of the issues that a lot of players that play very cheesy run into oftentimes, right? Like, yeah, you're great at cheesing, but then maybe you get an advantage and you just lose the macro game in the long run. So nowadays, I do see Bly going for a lot of macro matches as well. This always strikes me as a little bit odd, right? Like, when I see this kind of thing, and I think that Bly is assuming it as well, I immediately want to, like, bailing bust this wall, right? It's double pylon, but I guess Harstem knows what he's doing, obviously. He's probably going to be able to fill in a couple gateways over there and still be completely fine. But anyways, first Oracle is already out. But anyways, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Like, I think the reason why Harstem decided to go for this, like, wall off at the top of the ramp rather than at the low ground immediately was just because he's up against Bly, and Bly is very well known for going for a little bit more of a cheeky game. All right, so here we go. First Oracle made its way across the map. Couple of drones will go down, and this is so silly nowadays, right? Like, players started skipping out spore crawlers in a lot of these scenarios. I mean, Bly perfectly knew exactly what he was going up against. He had all the time in the world to prepare spore crawlers. He made one inside of the main base, but apparently he's rather losing 2 drones here than actually focus on making an additional spore. I guess he used the money that the spore generally costs. He's going to delay it. He's going to plant one down right now. But he used that money here initially to squeeze out another queen. And that actually kept him perfectly safe against that very first adept. Now that there's a second one available, though, this might become a little bit more difficult. Overlord inside of the main as well. We do see a couple of Zerglings apparently slipping into the base. And that's actually a bit painful here as well. Harstem losing one of those sentries, and obviously that means he's going to have a bit of a harder time defending here as well. Second sentry, ooh, almost going down. Clutch force field there from Harstem. At the same time now, Harstem is on the other side of the map, flying in those oracles, trying to get a little bit of damage done. Small bit of miscontrol Only gets a single worker, but he gets both of the oracles out of there. Really quick third expansion here as well from Harstem. So I think he needs to bring those oracles back home, because otherwise he can certainly end up losing the Nexus. So that's exactly what's going on. Oracles are going to fly all the way back home. But with that timing of the third base, I mean, the economy for Harstem is going to be massive. As long as he manages to establish the base, and he should be more than okay. There we go. The zaps are going to be great. So when you go for a Nexus this greedy, right? And to put it in perspective, generally speaking, we see this Nexus started at about 5 minutes to maybe even a 5:30. So right now, we're 5:30 into the game, and, well, Nexus is already done. This obviously means that Harstem took a bit of a risk, but it pays off just fine, because judging by what Bly is doing so far, he's really not making that many units. Yeah, we see 8 roaches right now on the production tab, but I think that's mostly going to be defensive roaches in case there's going to be, like, I don't know, a double immortal instead of a war prism or something along those lines, being an absolute nuisance to him. So there we go. Second immortal is going to come up as well. And I guess the Forge in the main base was scouted, as well as the Twilight Council. I mean, the Overseer is right above it, so he knows exactly what he's going up against. So that does make the defense a little bit easier as well for Bly, but still making those roaches just in case. It's not really something you can get all too aggressive with, but usually 8 roaches is just enough to defend most early game pressures from the Protoss that are based around just 4 gateways. So there we go. That's gateway number 3 and gateway number 4 finishing up here for the Red Protoss. And he's already securing now the gases over at the third base. So look at the economy here already, right? So both players actually have a very good eco. Normally, at this point in the game, it's actually the Zerg player who is significantly ahead when it comes to the work account. But that's not the case this time around. Just because Harstem has been utilizing most of his chrono boosts on just building a whole bunch of probes, and because of the timing of that third, his economy right now is extremely good. Zergs usually are always a little bit scared, making drones for the 4th base. I usually advise for the people that I do coaching with when it comes to the Zerg versus Protoss matchup to really not make any drones for a 4th base until after the first big engagement. Just make non-stop units, because the chances of your opponent just simply sitting back, if the Protoss player is just sitting back, it's extremely uncommon. It doesn't really happen too much, but that seems to be exactly what Harstem is doing right now. He's just inviting his opponent to get the economy that he needs, and then to play the long, drawn-out macro game instead. Now, obviously, this does create some wonderful 3-base timing attacks as well for Harstem, right? So, obviously, he's had that 3-base economy going up very quickly. Right now, he's not making any more probes, and he's really focusing on a ton of units instead. So, well, I guess there's one more probe coming up, just because he wants to get a couple more. I mean, maybe he wants to saturate that gas, who knows, but he's going to be able to execute a very powerful timing attack here in just a little bit with a very strong army as well. Storm is already coming up now too, though, so I don't think he really wants to get all too aggressive. He's really just being super passive. The only form of harassment we've seen so far from Protoss is just a couple of these oracles, and this is where Zerg feels most comfortable, right? When Zerg is allowed to make a whatever, that's where they feel most comfortable, and already Harstem just simply planting down the 4th Nexus as well. This is for neither the Zerg or the Protoss a strategy I would recommend playing on the ladder, okay? I guess there's like a bit of mutual respect between these two as well. Harstem knowing that his opponent is not likely to roll over from a little bit of gateway pressure. And oh god, that's actually, oh god, losing these High Templar is massive. That is 4 High Templar down the drain. Wow. That was actually a very sloppy mistake though. Good force fields there. I mean, if we would have had those 4 storms available, right, by the time that Sonic Storm finishes up, this is going to be great. Here we go, Bly smelling blood in the water. Harstem obviously still capable of warping in a lot of units. He does still have a few High Templar left over. He's going to morph them into an Archon though, because Storm only just now finishes up. The Oracles from earlier do help out. And even though, you know, like the army was picked off, that's actually not that big of a deal, because he's going to be able to replace them quite easily. As long as he doesn't lose the 4th Nexus though. Losing the 4th Nexus here would be very, very painful. +1 melee did finish already for these Zerglings, so they're going to be quite a bit more powerful than normal. But with that Archon that we saw coming in previously, he should be able to defend this just barely. Whew. I'm actually a little surprised he lost those 4 High Templar just like that. That's not, generally speaking, that's not really a mistake we generally speaking see that much at this level of play. Obviously, High Templar are always on a separate hotkey group, and you don't really want to have them with your main army necessarily, but just simply having them float forward on move command, not something that we see happen all too often at this level of play. Anyway, so if Harstem wanted to go for some sort of 3-base timing pushes, I guess right now he's got 4 bases already, but if you wanted to go for like a gateway-based timing attack, it's gonna be difficult to pull that off. I mean, the High Templar are the biggest damage dealers in the army, right? Other than, I guess, the Immortals. So 3 Immortals were picked off as well, 5 High Templar. I don't really see a Protoss player with this kind of army being ready to speak on creep, or to step on creep, right? So, speaking of creep as well, the creep is basically everywhere already. It's only really 1 tumor on either end. But I guess there's like 7 different arms, right? It's like the creep octopus right now that's creeping across the map. I mean, obviously, Harstem could make the decision to get a little bit cheeky here and to try his hand at moving across. But judging by the fact he's already got the fleet beacon coming up right now, as well as additional stargates, I don't think he wants to really go ahead and pull that kind of thing off. In the meantime, though, on the side of the Zerg player, we have 7 Brood Lords being made. A couple of Zealots are trying to check how many bases are acquired here by the Zerg player so far. Guess this one Observer also knows exactly what's going on. Tempest already coming up. So that's actually a great Observer Scout there, seeing the Great Aspire just as it is available. I'm a little surprised he hasn't actually produced himself a single Observer. He's probably a little bit worried about the amount of units, and look at that. Bly actually morphing in a ton of Banelings. He's probably looking to see if he can finish this game right here, right now, with the Brood Lords on the march. The creep over here as well now allows these queens to get in position. So here we go, the Brood Lords are available. And the 4th base, okay, Harstem is making the executive decision. It's just simply being evacuated. There should be a clean pickup here by Bly. Really nicely done. Shutting down that economy just like that. At the same time, though, a Prism made its way across the map. It's gonna go probably after the Great Aspire inside of the main, after picking up those workers. New Nexus will be acquired on the right-hand side. Brood Lords are still gonna try and continue flying forward, but at this time, the Tempest are already available. There's really not that much anti-air other than a couple of those Queens, so these Tempests should have a great time. Look at the mains, though. Oh, good storms, really good storms. That gets rid of a lot of those. Apparently the Great Aspire, by the way, still lives as Bly sent a bunch of his army all the way back home. But these Tempests are worth their weight in gold right now, yeah. If the Queens go off creep, they're gonna have a very hard time achieving anything. Wasting a lot of that energy that he's been saving up for a good while as well. And I think that Bly is gonna have to be pushing back. Well, apparently he manages to land a couple of corrosive biles, but fighting these Tempests is not really something you want to do. But he got the 4th base, though. How many workers did Harstem kill? Okay, he killed 17 workers as well. So an eye for an eye here in the end. But, unless Bly wants to continue going on with this aggression here, which I don't think he should really do, considering, I mean, there's more and more Tempests coming out, and right now a freaking Mothership is already in production. He's not going to be able to achieve that much. I think he's better off, exactly, trying to snipe bases. Wonderful wall right here, though, for these Zealots. Getting a lot of work done. They do have +2, so they're going to be able to slice really quickly through all of these Zerglings, but it's not going to be enough. The Nexus falls, and while a lot of these Roaches and Zerglings will find their grave over here on the top right-hand corner of the map, they did manage to get the kill on the Nexus. Ooh, Tempest. They're being hunted. Nicely done. Using those Psionic Storms as well to try and zone to the best of his abilities. The creep here is actually looking very solid already. Did that Prism get picked off? I think it did, yeah. There's no more Prism available. So having no Prism actually makes this really quite tricky. I'm starting to get a little bit worried here for the economy of Harstem. There you go. He does have enough Tempest right now to one-shot these Brutes. That's huge, obviously. But the thing is, this army that Bly has is replaceable. He still has a very good economy, right? Like, he's got a lot of good mining bases. Well, I say that, and you know what? I just glanced down at the bottom section of the screen. He's only got 58 workers. It's not even really that much. He's not upgrading his air army either. So, you know, he's got +1 flyer weapons, I suppose, but really not that much. Good control here by Harstem, really utilizing a lot of these Tempests. And I love the fact, actually, that he's also now mixing in an Oracle. There's the big mama ship, by the way. She's going to be able to cloak a lot of units and then also just simply be that beefy unit that you really want in the middle of your composition. A couple of Infestors right now are apparently the name of the game, and once again, a Nexus gets cancelled. Did he ever make an Observer? Why is there no Observer? Maybe this is one of those stream challenges as well, right? Where he's trying to play the game without really having an Observer. It seems like an Observer would have been worth its weight in gold for a little while already. Obviously, I know some people will look at this and think, oh my god, he's not doing the best he can ever do. A lot of the times, whenever we see ladder games, that's why I pointed it out at the beginning of this cast. A lot of the times in ladder games, we see players going for like different challenges and different builds that are, technically speaking, not superior to the ones that they are most comfortable playing, but they're just trying out different things, right? I mean, that's what the greatest players in StarCraft do. They don't really care too much about winning and losing in the short term. They're all thinking long-term focused especially. So that may very well be the reason why Harstem has not decided here to make an observer yet. I really think he should go ahead and do so. But obviously if you... there you go. Now he finally... he does have an observer here. Yeah, no, there's one observer here in the middle of it. But he really hasn't been clearing a lot of creep. Maybe he's just trying out some different varieties of the same flavor of Protoss, I suppose. There we go. The oracles do provide that revelation. And I was pointing that out earlier. So I love the fact he mixed in a couple of oracles. Tempest can shoot extremely far away. They can shoot much further than they can see. And look at that. That revelation is now allowing Harstem to pick up a couple of those Brute Lords while he technically can't even see them. Now he's got to be careful. Infestors with Neural Parasite and Fungal Growth. They're going to try and catch those Tempests with ease. I guess that's why you need another observer, right? If you get another observer into the mix, it's going to make life much, much easier. Just so you can hopefully see if these units are tunneled on the ground as well. And I think that's exactly the reason right now why Bly is starting to mix in a couple of these spores as well in this choke point. Spore Crawler is obviously very, very helpful. He still doesn't have that much mining, by the way. Yeah, he's been mining off of like 66 workers for a while, but he never really has gone up to any more than that. A couple of Vipers right now also being added into the mix here for Bly. There they are. They obviously have some incredible abilities as well that are very helpful in the late game. Once again, though. There we go. There's one already. Once again, though, good control here by Harstem. Yeah, he got one of his units abducted, but he also ended up getting a very nice kill on one of those Tempests. And Tempests are not cheap units. Okay, so when it comes to late game, right? Usually, the most important resource for both of these races is gas. So the more gas-heavy units you can get, the better the game becomes. Obviously, for Zerg, you can go ahead and make a lot of these Infestors. You can tech up to watch Brute Lords. You can get yourself a lot of upgrades. You can go Vipers. All of those units are phenomenal in the late game. Likewise for Harstem, the more gas-heavy units you can get, the stronger his army becomes. I mean, obviously, the Stargate units are very expensive. The upgrades are very expensive. The High Templar are very expensive. The Archons are very expensive. And, yeah, you don't necessarily want to have too much of your supply caught up in units that aren't very gas-heavy in the later stages of it. So that's why he's already getting brave with these Immortals. The Immortals, surprisingly unimportant at this point in the game. You can definitely go ahead and sacrifice those at a later time, too. Because, I mean, look at this. Look at the Zerg army right now. Normally, you want to go Immortals because they're phenomenal against, for example, well, Roaches and, I guess, Queens as well in the early game. But the thing is, later on into the game, Zerg really doesn't want to have Roaches, and usually they don't even necessarily want to have that many Queens either. So they're a great counter to the early game of the Zerg, but in the mid game stages, I don't think you necessarily want to pull that kind of thing off. Love this, by the way. Look at this. One Void Ray being followed around by an observer, and apparently they're best buddies. This is the creep cleaning squad right over there, trying to clean up as many of those tumors as possible, and there we go. That actually works like a charm. You don't really see that all too often. That's awesome. Anyways, we see at the same time Bly trying to commit to an engagement once again. This is exactly where Harstem would love to fight. Right on top of photon cannons, a couple of shieldy boys. Always very good. Likewise, obviously, Bly does not want to fight without his static defense present. But the advantage right now for Protoss is that they can easily pick up a lot of these things from a distance. He does have to be careful. Infestors, ooh, there you go. Trying to land their fungal growth. Apparently that Oracle though, or rather the Void Ray, not gonna live to tell the tale. The Immortals still brave at work too. They managed to get themselves a hatchery. That's really nicely done. So all of the creep on the left-hand side of the map right now has been cleaned up. And Harstem finally has secured himself a pretty good economy as well. There's still that one tumor over here. I would love to try and see him take this base, and maybe this base right over here too. It's always difficult though for Protoss to know at this point in the game how much economy Zerg really has. So in this particular case, right, we see Bly making a lot of static defense, but he really doesn't even have that much economy. These Immortals, dude. These Immortals have been doing so much. I can guarantee you that Cero would have sent a hit squad of Zerglings here a while ago. These have been worth their weight in absolute gold. There we go. Finally, Zerglings are coming in. So I don't think they're going to live very long, but... Or very much longer, rather. There we go. But look at the resources lost, right? So even though Harstem certainly seems to have lost a lot of resources, he's actually been out-mining his opponent for a very long time. And he's been also doing an excellent job just simply trading efficiently. Now the real trouble, and here's by the way that mass expand. The real trouble for Protoss in the late game against Zerg is the amount of spellcasters. Ooh, nice. Sonic Storm as well. That really does soften up a lot of these Corruptors. But Zerg has a couple of spellcasters that are very, very powerful. So on paper, right? If you play absolutely perfectly, I'm pretty sure that that the Zerg versus Protoss matchup in the late game. Well, I'm not pretty sure. I know for a fact that if you play it perfectly, Zerg is favored. Okay, and there's this weird notion where whenever I cast like a late game of Zerg versus Protoss, right? It's always gonna be people in the comment section like, oh yeah, of course Zerg wins, Zerg imba. The thing is, even though I feel like I'm pretty good at playing the Zerg pieces, I lose the vast majority of late game Zerg versus Protoss. So the reason for that, right, is not so much that the units that I play aren't good. I mean, I play the same unit composition, for example, that we see Bly playing here, or the one that for example, Sarah would like to play. The issue is that my control is not nearly as good. I try really hard, but it's extremely easy to mix and mess it up. It's very, very easy to make small errors. By the way, another base right here falls. Both players have been skirmishing back and forth for a little while here in the center. And that's exactly what Harstem is looking for right now. Right? He's trying to see if he can find an error, like a chink in the armor, I suppose, of Bly, and then capitalize on that. So one of the issues, for example, that I run into quite frequently when I try and play Infestor, Broodlord, Corruptor, Queen, Viper, is that if you make one mistake, right, and you accidentally fly your Corruptors over a couple of Archons, that's it, they're all dead. Or for example, when I try and get a little bit greedy with the Neural Parasites, right, and I move a little bit too far forward with the Infestors, that's it, GG, you're dead. Right? Like, the mistakes are very, very slim, and the margins for error are even slimmer. It's super difficult to control this properly. Now, when you see someone like Cyril play the late game of Zerg versus Protoss, he makes it look a little bit broken, let's be real. It's just that we're talking like the top 0.01 percentile. Anyways, Zerg hit squad right here, once again going after this Nexus. At the same time, we did see the Neural Parasite over there as well, but quick recalls to one of the Nexi. Harstem also now counterattacking still with that hit squad of a couple of those Archons and then also a few of these Zealots. They're trying to get the most of it. Okay, looks like they're not going to live for too much longer, but also a recall being utilized there. Oh, he actually used the recall towards the Mothership. That's what happened. That's awesome, actually. So you can obviously recall towards the Nexus, but you can also recall towards the Mothership. Those two cooldowns do not overlap. So in the later stage of the game, you essentially have two recalls, which is really cool. Ooh, gotta be careful. Don't want to get your Mothership corrosive biled. He's trying to go for the cutoff right now. Trying to prevent this Zerg army from retreating. Ooh, there you go. Good set of storms once again. And they're gonna be forced to back off. Harstem is cleaning up a lot of the creep. But he's not really securing that many bases. And that's what kind of concerns me right now. He's lost a bunch of probes. And he's not really been able to mine for a very long time. Likewise though, Bly still never really got himself that sick of an economy. He keeps on making a lot of static defense, which is great. He does replace a couple of drones here and there, but he also is actually losing a lot. So look at this. These drones are going to be in a lot of trouble, and this is like thousands of resources lost here for the blue Zerg. I guess now also the Zealots will not live for that much longer, but that's still a really wonderful move. And once again, look at this. Harstem being extremely solid. So he recognizes the scenario perfectly, okay? So there's this weird dynamic where neither player actually wants to fight with the main army without the presence of static defense or the other player overextending, right? So Bly doesn't want to fight off creep and he doesn't want to fight without his spore crawlers, and likewise Harstem doesn't want to do the same thing either. Once again, a recall towards that Mothership, keeping that Archon alive. So that means that most of the actual plays happen with these small hit squads. Generally speaking, right? Say like the game has been going very evenly and the players trade mostly evenly in these big fights too, right? It mostly at that point comes down to the player that's been mining more. So up to this point in the game, I do think that the mining here is in heavy favor of Bly. He's been doing a great job just simply out-macroing his opponent when it comes to all of those workers. But once again, Harstem, dude, he's become extremely vigilant. He's trying to secure another Nexus, but likewise, Bly also very vigilant going after that Nexus. This time around, though, the Tempests are available. Okay, yeah, no. Retarget firing there. The Nexus. I didn't mean to I didn't mean to, you know, do the angry nerd sound. Retargeting the Nexus, but a couple of hatcheries are falling. Apparently this hatch over here may very well be picked up in a little bit too. And when it comes to drone kills, so far Harstem has killed 87 of them. 81 probes apparently picked off as well. That's a lot of probes. I guess those have been picked up with all of these little counterattacks and all of the bits and pieces here and there. It adds up pretty quickly over time. Harstem, though, has been, he's been sweeping the creep, right? He's been doing a great job just simply cleaning up the creep and preventing it from moving too much further. He needs to secure another base, but I think this one may finally actually finish. Usually what I enjoy doing at this point in the game, and I understand that's not necessarily the best move you want to make at this level of play, but usually whenever I can't get a base up for quite some time, I just try and take like 2 or 3 expansions at once. And then, yeah, maybe, you know, it's like playing whack-a-mole with a base, you know? Like, maybe 1 or 2 get knocked down, but the third one is bound to slip through. So I wouldn't mind seeing him take this one over here, and then maybe even this one, right? So maybe Bly is going to be content with just killing this Nexus, but then you still have 2 new ones acquired. Anyways, doesn't matter. Harstem still managed to secure another base, and he's now actually also expanding towards another one a little bit closer by. I think that's because his main Nexus here in the center is going to mine out, and he's also now killing the base in the bottom left. So he's taking control of his little section. I guess like his little, like, I don't know, quadrant or so of the map. And yeah, that should be enough for the time being. Likewise, though, this is the moment where Bly is becoming very passive. Look at the resources that he's got. He's completely broke. It's like, yeah, he may have a maxed out army. And yeah, he does have a lot of good static defense and all that too. But he hasn't actually been mining all too much. Love this as well. Look at that. Never seen that before in a pro game. Look at the minimap. There's a line of all of those stasis wards set up everywhere. So if Harstem decides, or rather if Bly decides to get aggressive, he's gonna be caught off guard for sure. He doesn't know about it, right? Like if you look right here at Bly's vision, no, he has no idea. He still has a really good amount of creep spread, but his opponent really hasn't been engaging into it right now. And this is also the moment where if you're a Zerg player, your heart kind of sinks. So Bly's project, his entire game up to this point, right, has been to try and secure as many bases as possible himself, and then to try and reduce his opponent's economy as much as possible as well. Now, we saw him certainly reducing the economy of Harstem for a long time, but now all of a sudden there's 2 new Nexi that he has to worry about, and that's a disaster for him. Like, that's not something you actually want. If he sees this Nexus taken over here too, he knows that the one on the high ground will also be acquired. And obviously that immediately means that now he has to deal with a much scarier Protoss army. Not only is it going to be maxed out, it's going to have a lot of resources to remax with as well. By the way, that Prism, man. That Prism still being an absolute pain in the butt. I mean, it's not going to live for too much longer. I don't think so anyway, if these Corruptors have anything to say about it. He's even going to recall these Zealots. Yeah, why not? Just recall them. There you go. Every single resource counts. I mean, I don't mean to say that Zealot lives are a resource, but, you know, they're 100 minerals. A little bit of creep cleaning once again, maybe getting a queen right over here too. Maybe even another, I don't know, spore crawler or 2, right? Nicely done. They're getting their value. And while the Corruptors did not quite manage to clean up that Prism, Harstem is just trying to contain his opponent on as few bases as possible right now as well. How many hatcheries did he kill? 5 hatcheries in total, yeah. So it's 5 hatcheries and 4 Nexi in total. It's pretty sick. So when it comes to resources lost, though, this is heavily in favor of Protoss right now. Losing about, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7,000 resources less. I'm not even gonna try and do the math, but it's roughly in that ballpark, okay? Harstem right now also starting to feel a little bit brave. He's like, you know what? You were knocking down my bases perfectly early on. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and take another expansion, see what you're gonna do about this one. And Bly is kind of dropping the ball right now on some of the scouting, right? Like, yeah, he knows that his opponent did take this base over here. He knows about the base over here. I think this one is a very blaring, obvious thing to assume your opponent to take it next. Really critical. By the way, he only has 8 Ravagers and 10 Banelings and then 22 Zerglings. So this is really like his only, like, unit that can actually just attack straight up, other than those Brute Lords, I suppose. The Corruptors, obviously, not gonna be very good when it comes to cleaning up these Zealot run-bys and all that. There we go. Zerglings once again making their way towards the top, and I like this. This is a great move. He found out about this Nexus, and look at the damage that +3 Zerglings do, okay? This is +3 Zerglings with Adrenal Glands. Look how long it takes them to kill a base. It's insane. Now it's fully surrounded. Ooh. You gotta be on the point right there with the Council. And that's exactly the case. Now, up to this point, we've seen mostly a focus on not Corruptor, sorry, on Tempest. Whoa, 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 whoa! Is this on purpose? Harstem? That has to be on purpose, right? Whoa! What in the world? Wait, how many did he just kill? Okay, it doesn't actually show up on the resources lost, apparently. I guess that's on purpose. I was gonna say, like, up to this point, he's been making primarily Tempests, but Tempests kind of fall off a little while later into the game, right? Because Zerg right now is maxed out on Spellcasters. He kind of wants to replace most of his air army with carriers instead. And you know what? I think he's trying to make this a carrier surprise. Most of the army that Bly has right now is phenomenal, especially against Tempests. They're not going to be as great against fully upgraded carriers. And that's what he's looking to get right now. Trying to get as many of these upgrades as possible as well. That's a lot of carriers, guys. Warping in a couple of additional High Templar to make a few more Archons as well. The Protoss Death Ball is just about to be completed. Apparently all of these Warp Prisms now also have a... oh, that was great, by the way. Yeah, he just saw that. Wonderful move. Yeah, all of these High Templar also have a private plane. That's amazing, right? Imagine being a High Templar. I guess they're like the doctors, or like the engineers, or like the lawyers of the Protoss society. And now they also get private jets just to be flown around in. Living the dream, dude. But anyways, as soon as these couple of carriers will finish up, this Protoss Death Ball is complete. And we'll see what Harstem wants to achieve with it. I'm a little surprised he just sort of killed his own Tempest, but I guess he wanted to clean up that supply real quick. Because sometimes when you, I guess, grab the Tempest and you just send them towards your opponent's side of the map, you know, like, they will see, hey, you're giving away a lot of army supply. I'm just going to go ahead and do counterattack, and you're going to be in trouble because you have way less supply right now. I mean, your unit's going to be stuck in production. I think that's really the only reason why I can imagine that was a reason or a decision he made that. But anyways, one more carrier coming up, and then Harstem is going to be completely maxed out. Bly has been able to max out for a little while. Probably doesn't necessarily want to make the commitment here to making even more Infestors or even more Vipers. How many Infestors is this right now? 28. Now, we did recently see a pretty big change to the late game stage of Zerg versus Protoss. So, Infested Terrans, they had a bug apparently where they ignored armor. That's no longer the case. And they also just simply deal less damage to begin with. So, they have become a little bit weaker. Likewise, the carriers used to have a very long... Where did they go? Here we go. The carriers used to have, I believe, 15 seconds or so on the rebuilding of one interceptor. And I believe it's been reduced to like 12. Or maybe it was like 12 to 9. I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, basically what it comes down to is that the Infested Terrans deal less damage. And the carriers are able to rebuild their interceptors faster. It's a significant change. And it certainly will come into effect here. But I haven't actually seen a lot of ultimate late game Zerg versus Protoss engagements yet. And at some point, right, these two players are going to have to clash. These two players are going to have to clash. And we'll see what it's going to look like. Man. Look how fast they kill the things. It's so insane. I think it's actually going to die again. It's just like 7 Zerglings right now remaining. Yep. Oh, man. Poor Harstem, dude. Like, he's been trying so hard to get these bases up. But the Protoss late game army is so immobile when it comes to, like, Zerglings, for example. It's kind of painful. Anyways, I would definitely say, though, if you see one of the top-level Zerg players play late game Zerg versus Protoss, and this is, I think, where a lot of the frustration is at, if Zerg plays near perfect, it seems to be heavily in favor of the Zerg player. However, for everyone, you know, for every single one of us that is below the tippity top of the skill level, and that includes, well, pretty much everyone, even like Grandmaster level players, right? They do not They do not have the perfect micro either. It makes it look very overpowered in the late game. But for everyone else out there, we're all out there struggling, okay, fighting Protoss in the late game. Even if you're like, you know, top 50 Grandmaster, I don't think that's enough. I think if you're a top 50 Grandmaster and you're playing late game Zerg versus Protoss, it's probably still heavily in favor of Protoss in a lot of those fights. Whereas if you see someone like Cyril play it, or for example like someone like Raynor who's become really good as well at the late game micro, it makes it look very broken. So I wonder what it's gonna look like. I'm talking, by the way, about this engagement that's about to come up in the previous patch. So in the new patch that landed a couple of weeks back, I mean, obviously, like I just mentioned, the carrier got a little bit of a buff and the infested Terran got a little bit of a nerf. It's a small adjustment, but it may very well be what Harstem needs here in order to obtain the victory. Bly is obviously certainly one of those players who can execute that micro, by the way, for those of you curious. He can definitely make this look very broken, but I'm curious to see how this is all going to play out. There's going to be this one climax. Ooh, looks like there was a little bit of a pause. There's going to be that one climax here, where both players want to engage on their own terms. Love this, by the way. Apparently, we're going back to Archon drops now. 36 minutes into the game. Archon drops apparently the name of the game. There's a lot of Zerg, though. Yeah, he's just getting out of there. Love that, by the way. Going for the Overseer, or the War Prism speed, rather, and then also the Observer speed. They're much quicker now than they normally are. But there we go. Finally, a little bit of that energy is being expended. And I think that this Nexus over here may very well end up falling. But at the same time, Harstem has had enough. He's making a dive for it right now. Cleaning up the creep. And maybe going after this expansion right on the right-hand side of the map. Infested Terrans should be able to kill that Nexus eventually. And right now, the Zerg army is scrambling its way back home. Look at the amount of interceptors, man. I mean, yeah, you can kill this base, but this base achieves about nothing. He doesn't care about this base anymore. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of gas mining left there. When all the interceptors are employed, though, there's no way that Zerg is going to jump in there. Same time, Zerglings right now once again coming in for the counterattack. But both players right now are mostly just killing bases that aren't even really mining anymore. I guess the base over here was still mining, but... I mean, this one, he doesn't really care. This one over here, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of gas. Gas is the most important resource here, for sure. But it's not that critical anymore. Yeah, this Nexus is actually becoming a very interesting one. So this base has been acquired by Bly a little while ago already. With the amount of creep here, it seems like this Nexus is much easier to approach than this base over here. But Bly, though, still is not likely to keep that hatchery alive for too much longer. He has the double Vespian Geyser still set up over here, and also two over on the left-hand side, the bottom left, that is. He's actually got a bit of a gas overflow, but I guess that's primarily because he really hasn't had that much economy. He never really went over 70 drones here. That's very interesting. Most of the time we do see players going over 70 workers. Really, like the same can be said for Harstem. Never really getting that much eco either. Oh god, Bly! He managed to get the Neuroparasite there on that mothership. We did see a quick recall towards the Nexus, but I've got a feeling that that mothership will not live. Oh god. Yep, nope, that one will be picked off just like that. And 400 minerals, 400 gas go straight down the drain. Harstem will actually have to rebuild that mothership right now. Believe it or not, motherships take about, give or take, 4.5 years. At least whenever I play Protoss. Oh my god, did he not get the Nexus either? Woo, that's painful. Yep. That's the Prism gone, and that's gonna be those Archons gone too. Oh my god, he actually could have gotten it, probably. Well, not now anymore. Anyways, yeah, no, that's a couple of painful losses right there. Motherships, I've made them a whole bunch as well as Protoss. That takes so long to build. Like, he keeps chrono boosting it here. Look how slow that little blue, like, little cyan bar, the little teal, whatever that color is called, okay? Look how long that takes. It's insane. He's now also even getting himself the shield level upgrades. Zerg at the same time is at 3333333 upgrades. And then the same can be said here very soon for Protoss too. Does he have the ground armor? I sometimes have a difficult time figuring out which one is the ground weapon upgrades and which one is the air weapon upgrades. Or the air armor upgrades, rather. Anyways, Harstem just about to approach some very good late game armies here as well. And he's got a lot of money too, actually. The only thing I don't really like here for Harstem... Apparently there was another pause. The only thing I don't really like here for Harstem is the amount of gas he's got. He really needs to saturate this gas over here. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but once these army clash, right, and say in a hypothetical world, once again, they trade evenly, it comes down to the player that can remax. And at this point, there's a lot more gas in the bank for Bly. Like, say Bly wanted to reinforce this army. Say they clash, right? And a lot of the Stargate units will still live. He's gonna reinforce this army, I can guarantee you, with a ton of Corruptors. And the Corruptors can actually clean this up relatively easily, right? At the same time, Harstem could reinforce with, like, what? Say he loses the fight and he wants to reinforce. What is he gonna reinforce with? Stalkers? I mean, this ratio of minerals and gas doesn't really lend itself to very much. So I really would like to see him mine this gas over here and then these two over here too. Really critical. Obviously, it comes down to the engagement, and both players are really busy trying to outmaneuver each other and trying to get the perfect engagement. But thinking long term, I would love to see those gases being acquired here as soon as possible. Yeah, Bly's doing that. By the way, other than this base, Zerg is just about to harvest every single resource on his side of the map. Yeah, he's gonna retake that hatchery right now too. Bly, or Harstem rather, did already take a lot of these bases. Dude, everything is just about to be mined out. I guess there's still a little bit over here, but... It's been a long time since I've seen a map completely mined out. I kind of want to see the entire map mined out. From start to finish. Like everything. Every single mineral patch gone. Do you think that's possible? I don't know if that's going to happen, but it'd be interesting. It'd be very interesting. Because then it just comes down to whichever army is more efficient. And I guess at that point, I'm going to have to hand it to the Zerg most of the time. If the control is equivalent on both sides. By the way, apparently he doesn't care about his Nexus anymore. Still a little bit of gas, though. Nah, instead, you know, he's like, you know what? I'll trade a base for you if I can get a base of yours as well. So I think he wants to try and see if he can get this Nexus, or rather this hatchery. Harstem, though, getting a little bit brave right now. Flying over the creep, not waiting for it to dissipate, but... I don't think that Nexus is gonna, or rather that hatchery is living for too much longer. 1 sec, my internet is killing itself. BRB 1 minute. Sorry, KK, ready, go. Okay. I love that. It's like, yeah, come on, man. I need to go to the bathroom real quick. 1 minute. I'll be back. That's amazing. I know a lot of people are scared of doing that. Just because their opponent might be a jerk and unpause in the middle of it. Like, BRP 1 minute, and you come back to all of your infestors gone. It's like, wait a second, what happened there? Nah, that happens. But not so much at the pro level. All these guys know each other very well. They meet each other all around the world very regularly as well. There's this weird thing where most of the pro gamers are actually pretty good friends as well. I don't necessarily know about, like, Harstem and Bly. But, you know, like, obviously, a lot of these guys will travel all around the world to compete in tournaments. And StarCraft 2 is obviously a single-player game, right? Like, you play it just by yourself, so you don't necessarily have teammates. So a lot of them will hang out at events and just simply talk about the game and actually become good friends while actually being competitors. It's a weird dynamic. Ooh, Harstem becoming real brave, though. I don't know if you want to fight off creep, if you're Zerg. But if you can take a fight on creep, that's where you want to shine. I mean, ideally, obviously, Bly wants to fight right over here, right? I mean, he's created this beautiful little fortress for himself. Oh, that's 4 High Templar. Oh, God. Dude, what was that? He just dove straight in there. I guess he got himself a couple kills, but I don't think that was worth the prism and 4 High Templar. Okay, once again, a little bit of static defense will be killed. A couple of interceptors get fungled. And while Bly is trying to catch the army on the retreat, not quite gonna happen. Oh, that was wonderful. That was good. So he managed to get a whole bunch of feedbacks. Tried to target fire down the Vipers in particular. Can't pick them up. Not with Fungal Grove. And once again, even though 2 of those private jet flyers apparently got out, 2 of them were picked off there as well. Okay, so Harstem is mining all of the sites, or all of the resources on his side. Once again, an Oracle gets picked off. You see the dynamic between these two players, right? And by the way, you know a game goes long when the replay timer automatically contains the 0 symbol in the front of it? I don't know exactly at what moment that appears, but I think it's like 40 minutes or so. I just realized it says 0, 44, 15, 16. That's pretty funny. You know a game goes long when the game starts indicating complete hours as well. Bly, only at 22 workers. He's long distance mining 1 gas geyser. Does he have any minerals left? Yeah, there's some minerals over here. And he did secure, once again, his hatchery. Harstem is going everywhere. Everywhere where the Zerg player is not. Both players usually have armies that are very mobile. In the late game, though, neither Zerg nor Protoss is particularly, like, mobile, right? And apparently we've now also arrived at the point where Harstem actually has 0 of his army supply caught up in Zealots. Likewise for Bly. I mean, he's got 1 Zergling, and there's some in production here. But neither player really wants to have a lot of army supply caught up in units that aren't flyers or spellcasters. This is gonna come down to one big clash. I'm extremely curious how that's gonna go. We're reaching the climax of this game, though. The last resources that are mineable are all gonna be close to where your opponent is located too, right? So that's why we probably see Harstem getting more and more ballsy out on the map. He's also trying to steer the attention of Bly away from his mining bases. So I think he actually probably wants to try and see if he can get this base going. Not a terrible idea. Bly's still sitting at 3,500 minerals, but Harstem has 10k, so he could definitely try his hand at securing another base, maybe getting some additional gases, or even long-distance mining those, though. That's a very long distance, I guess, because they're gonna have to return to the natural. This kind of reminds me of the 8-man free-for-all that I casted recently, except it's a 1v1. I can excuse the passivity here of Bly a lot more, though. Love this, by the way. That's actually really cute. I didn't realize they could shoot biles over the little, I don't know, chasm. Yeah, I guess that's a chasm. What if there's a chasm fiend that crawls right up? Anyone here familiar with chasm fiends? Oh, man. Can highly recommend the Stormlight Archive for those of you that are into reading. There's a creature called a chasm fiend in that book. They come up through the chasms. Anyways. Ooh, this is good. Okay, so Harstem got himself a couple of those infestors. They did manage to get the fungal growths as well. Once again, the High Templar. Look at the feedbacks. Look at those storms dealing so much damage. And you know what? Most importantly, they're also zoning this army away. Zerg doesn't really want to move up to watch the high ground. Harstem managed to kill another base, managed to get a really powerful staging ground right over here to the next, or rather the mothership. Kind of looks like a nexus, I suppose. Once again gets abducted, and it will be picked up. Big pick up there once again from Bly. Does Harstem even want to, like, rebuild one right now? Yeah, apparently he does. Even though it's going to take like 4.5 hours, like we discussed previously. It will be back here. And while it's literally a floating city, apparently one of these Yankee boys has a big enough tongue to I don't know, yank an entire city away. It's quite impressive, really. Like, they have some, like, proper muscular tongues. Ooh, this is not the fight you want to take, though, Harstem. Yeah, go back. It's one overextension away from being game over for either of these players. That's why Bly is hugging the creep. Ooh, looks like these, well, apparently most of these Ravagers will be picked off. He wants to keep track of where this Zerg army is located, and luckily for Harstem there, the whole Zerg army now flies into the vision radius there of the one Oracle with Revelation. Infestation Pit will be cleaned up here as well, and a little bit more creep, and he's probably going to get rid of all of these tumors on the right-hand side in just a little bit as well. He's now actually looking to assault the main base of Zerg. This is a dicey scenario, right? Because if all of the Zerg units have to scramble to try and get into the main base, that could become a bit of a problem as well. Oh, once again, these High Templar are so important. There we go. Managed to get themselves, well, feedback on a couple of these Vipers. I guess this one carrier will not live to tell the tale, but that's okay. Mothership just about to spawn once again, and when I say just about, it's still about an hour away. He's cleaning up the creep, by the way. But I want to get the action shot of the Mothership spawning, okay? Here we go. You ready? There it is. He chrono boosted it again, even though there's nothing happening anymore, just because of force of habit. Okay. So we had some small skirmishes here and there. Bly, by the way, still mining, right? This is huge. Like, he's still mining a full base, and this Nexus over here is actually running out. You know what? Harstem is just about to run out of money. Like, I know, I say he's just about to run out of money when he's still got 10,000 minerals in the bank. But what I mean is that he doesn't have a lot of mining anymore to do, right? I do like his bank here in general, but it's not as much gas as I would like to see. Late game, Zerg vs Protoss, once again, it's all dominated by gas. The more gas you can get, the better. Now, obviously, that's relevant. Unless you get yourself a perfect engagement. And that's what Harstem is looking for. Floating across the skies. War prisms following around everything, filled with the private jet couriers. Getting as many of those High Templars with Storm and feedback and all that as possible as well. I'm still a little bit worried though. Because I can imagine that at some point, Harstem will overextend just a little bit too far. Neural parasites go off on all of this Protoss army and everything dies, and then it's like game over, and the comment section is gonna be like, Ree! Lowko, don't you think Zerg is imba as well? Ree! It's like, no. Like, Protoss overextended. But Lowko, did you not see? Yeah, I did see. So far though, Harstem is doing a great job. Skating by just barely, right? He's extremely careful. Ooh. Bly, 5k in the bank. He can remax on whatever he likes. Oh my god. He did recall. Yeah, I know. He saw what was gonna happen. Did you see that? He anticipated the neural parasite, so he recalled before the neural parasite connected with the mothership. And that way he managed to actually prevent it from getting neural parasited. You have to predict what your opponent is gonna do next. It's kind of like playing chess, because otherwise you can certainly lose everything. Now, you give Bly an inch. Apparently, he's immediately putting down tumors all over the map again. Even though Harstem has been trying to prevent this paint from crossing the canvas. Apparently, he's gonna have to do a good job once again, using his, like... What does Bob Ross use again? Odorless paint thinner or something like that? I'm not entirely sure. Ooh, here we go. Is this the moment we've been waiting for? Oh, a lot of these infestors get pretty much picked off for free once again. Oh my god. I love these High Templar inside of that prism. That's huge. Not really something we see that often in this late game of Zerg versus Protoss, right? But this is going like a charm right now. Harstem getting a beautiful engagement. Once again, the mothership does get abducted, so that's not really what he's looking for. But, man, the storms on all of those units, so very, like, valuable. Most of the Brute Lords right now are gone, and if the Brute Lords are gone, the Gateway armies, once again, can become extremely powerful as well. Looks like Harstem finally found the engagement that he's looking for. He's breaking onto the high ground as well. Infestors are trying to run away to the best of his abilities. Right now, 13 Corruptors are coming up. Keep in mind, Interceptors still take a long time to rebuild, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't take as long as it once did. But once the Interceptors are gone, this Protoss army is extremely vulnerable. And every single time you see one of these Spore Crawlers shoot, one of them will get picked off. We also now do see massive fungal growths actually picking up a lot of these units. And once again, the Zerg army flies away. Bly dropping extremely rapidly in supply. We see a couple of Void Rays right now coming up, so that's Harstem anticipating exactly what the switch is going to look like. We see the Interceptors right now trying to make the best of this. Parasitic bombs happening as well. Apparently, somehow, some way, Harstem figured out which of the units managed to get Parasitic bombed. Most of the Interceptors right now are gone, though, and here are the reinforcements coming up as well for Zerg. More and more Corruptors floating forward, and this is where that bank really comes into play. Harstem doesn't have that much gas. He's trying to produce a few of these Void Rays and getting himself a couple of Archons as well, but the Brute Lords still live. That means that these Archons will be picked off as well. And even though that fight seemed to go in favor of Harstem there initially, the bank of Bly, absolutely massive. I tried to draw your attention to it during the game. It seemed so very significant, and I think right now Bly is looking extremely good. Obviously, though, this is not game over yet, right? I mean, oh god, these storms! Okay, it looks like oh god, dude, that could have been a disaster. It looked like all of those Corruptors were gonna be picked off for a little bit too, but the High Templar will die instead, and the Archons and the Zealots are gonna have to run for their lives. So this is the problem right now. This army that Harstem just threw away takes about 7.5 years to produce, and look, the gas bank. He's got 150 gas. Where are you gonna build? What are you gonna build right now against Brute Lords? Brute Lords and 11 Infestors, that is. Oh, that was basically the best engagement Harstem could hope for. But Bly just simply has mined more resources, right? If we look right here at the units lost, we see more gas lost here. So Harstem just simply lost like 4,000 more gas. And, yeah, I did math, by the way, in a YouTube video. That's pretty insane. And while he did trade minerals for it, I suppose, that's one of the things you would trade any day of the week. So right now, the Zealots, yeah, they're apparently going to be the counter attack right now. If you can get a huge counter with Zealots, obviously, that's still very doable. But Harstem is no longer mining. Oh my god. I think that Bly has done it. Woo! He's still playing cautiously. He's actually out of minerals right now, interestingly enough, but he still has this full base to mine. Ay, 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 ay. Harstem pulling the boys. Where are the boys gonna go? Yeah, apparently he's gonna try and secure this nexus over here and get these gases going. Okay. Wow. That was an extremely long game. And both players trying to play that as patiently as possible. I guess the real issue here, right, is the cost efficiency of Zerg in the late game. So when it comes to Zerg in the late game, they just simply lose less resources than the other race. Imagine right here that that Harstem would have been able to remax just as quickly as Bly could, right? That obviously didn't happen. Because he can't. Like, he has to produce every single unit he produces out of a freaking Stargate, right? So it takes a very long time for him to remax. Whereas Bly can hold down the Corruptor button, and they will come floating towards the rest of his Corruptors within the next, like, 45 seconds or so, right? Like, they spawn pretty much all immediately, and that's really the strength of Zerg. So Bly, even though that fight really did not seem like it was going in his favor particularly well, he didn't really get a lot of neural parasites off, didn't get the greatest abducts either. Eventually, all of those interceptors were picked off and the reinforcing Corruptors could do so much. I wonder though what would have happened here if Harstem, rather than staying around for that long, would have recalled those carriers, right? I really feel like when he first cleaned up most of those interfestors, when he first cleaned up most of those infestors and he lost most of his own interceptors, I think that would have been a good moment for him to recall and to try and get out of there and then go back in a couple minutes later. Because keep in mind, the interceptors only cost minerals, right? They're 15 minerals each. So maybe that would have been a bit of a better choice. I don't know, but this is still very much so like an undiscovered territory in the Zerg versus Protoss matchups. Like, yeah, technically speaking, maybe the late game is a little bit Zerg favored, and I'm with you on that one. But it really only is true for the 0.0001 percentile of Zerg players, and it really only is true if the mining has not been, has not been disturbed very much. I mean, obviously, yeah, a lot of hatcheries were picked off, and Harstem was doing a great job denying the mining there for a long time, but Bly just simply had a better ratio of minerals and gas there when he had to remax, and I guess that's what allowed him to win in the long run. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Nearly every single set of minerals was mined out on Triton LE, a map that is considered to be pretty big. So that was awesome. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, hit that like button. If you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as I upload more. And other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again in the next one.